Hello, hello. This is Yuri with Moving Sales Professionals and Let's Talk Moving Podcast. And with me today, I have Bryan Hayes with ElevateX Sales joining us again. How you doing today, Bryan?
I'm fantastic. How about yourself? Thanks
Good,
for
good,
having me
good.
on again.
Great. Thank you for joining me. Really appreciate it. So, today we are going to talk about something that frankly worries everybody that's in the moving industry. We're going to talk about where we are in terms of interest rates, where we are in terms of housing market. We're going to talk about what it is that we should expect to happen. What are the projections? So that's what we're going to talk about. So, Bryan, you deal with the housing market, you deal with some commercial moving and things like that in real estate. So talk about that, please.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Always happy to put out some good information. So I specialize in real estate marketing, commercial real estate marketing. Also working with a property management firm that does residential property management for rental properties. So I've got a really good pulse on the market and happy to share some of that insight when it comes to the interest rates and how it affects commercial as well as residential. I'm telling you, everyone's holding their breath. We don't know what's going to happen. We have opinions on where the dice are going to land, but honestly, in my opinion, everyone is holding their breath for the next was that 60 days, 40 to 5 days, something like that,
Yeah.
until the election to really make any decisions. And that's what I'm seeing recently is everyone's
Now,
just holding weight.
right. And that's what we're seeing too. Now, obviously, there's been rumors that the interest rates are going to be going down.
Yep.
I heard 4.5 to 4.75%, something like that, which, that's almost a whole percentage point plus from where we are now, depending on, of course, on your credit and what have you.
And now for a word from our sponsors. If you're a moving business owner, you may have already heard of Moversville, an email marketing service that helps moving companies increase, repeat, and referral business. But have you heard of Moversville Connect? Moversville Connect is an incredible resource for all things moving. They feature an array of vendors and services that cater specifically to the moving industry. You can find companies that provide moving software, moving sales services, marketing services, moving equipment providers, and much, much more. Visit moversville.com today to learn more.
Yep. Interest rates recently went down 0.5% already, and they're projecting to do more easement, I think is what they're calling it, kind of soften the landing and make money more readily available at a cheaper price. Because that's what interest rates are, is, as a business, you're evaluating all the costs associated with you to do something
Hmm.
and interest rates for you to pay it back. It's a part of the expense. And so sometimes it just doesn't pencil out if interest rates are too high. Great example of that, when interest rates started going up, I was in commercial real estate and I was in urban real estate representation. So I was dealing with the uptowns, downtown markets of Dallas Fort Worth. And as interest rates started going up, the landlords were like, look, this lease doesn't make sense because it's going to cost us too much to make the lease happen. So let's say there's a tenant improvement allowance of $100,000. And yes, they're going to net more than 100,000 over the length of the lease, but the front end cost, it just that they don't see their profit margin where they want it, and so then it just doesn't make sense. So they're going to hold out and wait for better climate. Real estate is all about the waiting game. It's the long game. With interest rates going up, things start to go down, and as interest rates start to ease, things become more accessible. And so people are more likely to do something because the cost goes down.
Understandable. Now, in terms of the election, talk about that. What have you seen happen in previous election? What kind of jumps or movement?
Put me on the spot. What's your political views? That's what you're asking. No, I'm just
No,
kidding.
I'm not. I try to keep this, as far as that goes, I try to keep this podcast neutral when it comes to
Yes,
politics, religion, or anything of the sort.
yes. It's like,
More or
hey,
less. Now,
kind of
obviously, my views are very much known about Ukraine, so that's one place I will make a statement on. Everybody knows what my views are if you're following this podcast. But as far as everything else goes, we're neutral.
yeah. And it's really what's going to get us forward to a vision of the country's future that is agreeable. I always say goal alignment is very important. Goal alignment is you want something in that direction. I want something in that direction. Let's go together and both achieve our things that are in that future. That's how I base my decision. And whether it's, policies, whatever it is it a joint vision? And do I share that vision and will I go forward with it? So the current climate is unknown. I mean, if you're watching the news, which I know everyone is, it's like a toss up. It's like, we don't know who's going to win. That
That's of
doesn't
course if
help.
you're watching neutral media
Yes.
versus leaning one way or another, which of course is
Yes.
both
Oh
ways.
yeah. We're winning on this side and we're winning on this side. It's like,
Right.
come on, guys. Okay. You're both winning. Good job. Yay. Participation points.
Yeah,
But
reality, the real you want to look at real numbers and real
yeah,
numbers, it's tight.
it is.
That's the reality.
It
And
is.
we won't know until the election actually takes place and the numbers are
Oh,
counted.
no, we will not know. We're going to speculate though.
Does your company need more creative marketing and ad campaigns to improve traffic and organic leads? Well, Moving Sales Professionals has a solution for you. We have partnered with social media marketing agency that has over 300 million views on their ads and videos across social media, and they have generated over $35 million for their clients over the last 10 years alone. Their services include content creation, social media ads, pay-per-click campaigns, website and funnel development, Google Ads, email marketing campaigns, lead generation, and much, much more. For limited time only, they have discounted rates for their services. Sign up for a free consultation call with us via our Calendly link on our website or below this video.
Right.
Now, one vision of the future, to boil it down to the basis of what it could be, is one side is more not government control, more government oversight, more government, whatever you want to talk about, is increasing the strength of the government's use
Hmm.
within our lives and how we do business. And the other one is less, in
Hmm.
my opinion.
So, in my opinion, just having obviously speaking with the moving industry or removal industry people in UK, speaking with moving and removal industry people in Canada, speaking with moving industry people here in the United States. For this industry, at least that's my view. I like the controls that are in place in US as far as moving industry goes. And the reason I like that is because it tends to lean more towards exposing bad players and getting them out. And that's ultimately what all the companies that care about their brand, the ones that we frankly bring on the show,
Mhm.
um, that's what they care about. They care about their brand, they care about their legacy, they care about taking care of their customers, they care about actually not just making money, but also helping people.
Yeah.
Uh, that's what they generally care about. Whether some people agree or disagree is oversight, because if we don't have that oversight, it's going to be wild, wild west of moving, where we're already seeing that to a degree in California, where you have licensed movers in California are paying an arm and a leg for insurances, for trucks, for warehouses. Their costs are through
Yep.
the roof. It's absolutely insane, and they're competing with hundreds of unlicensed movers that don't have the same expenses, that can charge less because they don't have those expenses.
Yep.
And I'm sure that all those companies that are struggling, that are doing what they're supposed to do, would love for those companies that don't to get nailed, frankly.
Yeah. I think that it needs to be a joint vision for an industry and everyone needs to follow rules. I mean, we're in a civilized society. We need rules and we're playing a game and it's called business. And so we need to know, hey, you can't do this and you can't do that. I'm all for government.
Yeah, there's gotta be a fine line between rules and bureaucracy where you're going through a ton of paperwork.
That's where costs are associated, and that's where cost goes up. And that's exactly how it works in real estate. Is the more oversight. Like I had a great example. Did one of my last real estate transactions was for a nail salon in Uptown, very well-to-do area, very high-profile area. The owners were going to spend $1 million just on the build out of this space, and they did a 10-year lease. It took them 1 calendar year, 12 months to get their certificate of occupancy. They signed the lease, construction period, certificate of occupancy, 12 months because of all the red tape. Their costs will go up. They had to wait a year. They spent $1 million. They had to wait a year before they can even make money.
Right. So
90.
something like that, it's like ultimately as business people, we want that process to be simpler. Not
Yep.
necessarily they shouldn't have all those things in place, but simpler to the point because ultimately, for a country, if we're talking from that standpoint and taxes and IRS and everything else, the sooner we're able to make money, the sooner we're paying taxes for it. So the
And
more red tape there is, the more, once again, the rules need to be there.
yep,
Oversight needs to be there,
I
but to
agree.
what degree?
That's the $1 million question. To what degree? Do we handhold? Do we educate? Do we force? Do we mandate? There's a lot of what could be. And I'm just hoping that business leaders just do the right thing and stop trying to cut corners and stop trying to, yeah, cut costs. But, it's like illegally. Like everyone should function on the basis of a joint understanding of good business practice. It's like when
Right.
you and we engaged. I assumed that you would do this and this. You would be this kind of person, you would act this way. Like there's a standard of
Hmm. Unfortunately, there isn't a standard. It's what the person looks in the mirror, what they're okay with, and what they're not okay with.
yep.
And
Unfortunately.
that's the bottom line. It's one of the reason why right now so many moving companies are having issues with associating or working with brokers is because broker industry has been so wild and in some places getting more regulated. And I'm sure there's been rumors of it becoming even more so, which of course would help. So now like a broker can't go out there and call themselves a moving company legally. They can't do that anymore.
Hmm.
The other part is the fact that, dealing with brokers, because there's a lot of regulations that are expected, a lot of these brokers raise their initial deposits that they take and put in their pocket from original 20, 25, maybe 30% that they've been in the past. Now those costs are up 40. I've even heard 50 from somebody. So
Wow.
that leaves very little for a moving company to make, and it puts them in the position where they have to make that money somehow in order to be profitable on that job or on that pickup. And that puts them in a very, very bad place because what happens now is that you have all these companies that do all their work using a broker that end up with all these reviews that are that way because the brokers are lowballing the customers, because the brokers are
Hmm.
not providing accurate estimates, because the brokers are not doing what they're supposed to do. I'm not saying all of them. There's certainly companies out there that do good work despite being brokers, right? But the majority of information that's available and the stigma that's available, I've recently talked to a company that has like 80 claims basically on their Better Business Bureau, but the thing is that if you
Their
read
fault.
each one of them, it's not them. It's 100% the brokers that they were working with. They were simply coming to do a job and then they show up and the job is 10,000 pounds versus 5,000 pounds that the customer was quoted on. And of course, they have to raise the cost because they can't do it for a 5,000 pound price. And then the brokers are calling them and saying, hey, you're gouging my customers. And the company is saying, no, I'm not gouging your customers. You lowballed the customer. That's
Yeah.
why, and I have to charge them for what it actually is. So that a lot of that is happening, and it's hurting these companies. And then you have companies that are coming to me and saying, Yuri, I need you to do sales for me. And I look the company up. I look at their reviews. I look at their Better Business Bureau. I look at their Safer Web. I look at this information that's there, and I look at Google, and I see 5 reviews. And the thing is this, I've sat down a few years ago, I sat down at one of the moving company events, at Masara event actually. I sat down with a broker. We sat down at a table and we chatted for a little bit. And these guys are spending $100,000 a week on advertising. Most moving companies don't have that type of cash to spend on
Wow.
advertising. So when you're transitioning from working with a broker to doing those long distance jobs on your own, unless you're prepared for it and you've been prepared for it your entire time from the moment you started working with a broker, you're going to find yourself in a very difficult position because you don't have reviews. You don't
Yep.
have the visibility that a company doing long distance move needs to help in order to continue working. Because I use the same words when I have this conversation with movers. When you don't have any visibility online, you can still do local jobs. Because
Yep.
local jobs, the thought process is simple. I follow you in my car. If I don't like something, I call the cops. Very simple process, right? Long distance, they're putting their entire life in your truck
Oh,
that they're not going to see in some cases for 2 weeks or more. So,
I
in
can't
order for
imagine.
them to be able to trust that and to do that, they need to trust you, which means they're going to do research. They're going to find no reviews online. That's going to spook them.
That'll spook me real
That's
quick.
going to spook them. That's going to scare them. That means that they're going to probably going to go with somebody that has those reviews.
Yep.
Right? So if you guys are working with broker now and you're already pondering that separation eventually, maybe not right now, maybe in 6 months, maybe in a year, right? Well, guys, this is what you should be doing. What you should be doing is that you should already be soliciting those same customers that you pick up for brokers that are happy with your service. You should be soliciting them for reviews unattached to the brokers on Google to
So,
increase so that when you are ready to make that break from a broker, you already have something sitting there. Because you know what? If you separate today and you have zero visibility online, then you need to forget about doing long distance for at least 3 to 6 months because you need to build up that visibility first. Because if you have no visibility and you go right now and you pay money for leads, which have been crap, by the way, if you go and spend that money now, you're going to waste that money. You're going to throw it away because yeah, will you get a couple of long distance jobs? You will. You'll get a few, but not enough to make it worth it. Not
yep.
enough for it to cover what you're going to spend on leads to get those jobs. Not enough to do any of that.
Sounds like you guys have a problem similar to real estate, where there are licensed individuals that are holding their leverage over your business. Does
Sure.
that sound about right with
Yeah.
the brokerage community?
Well,
So,
with a brokerage community, like I said, that's the problem is that they're notorious for lowballing and not being truthful,
just
A,
trying
with
to get the deal.
customers, B, with movers.
Yeah, they're just trying to get the deal done. They don't
Mhm.
care
They're
about
just
the
trying to
end
put the money
client.
in their pocket, ultimately.
They're trying to take their margin.
Hmm.
And that's what's in real estate is, I mean, you have to you have to get a license, and there's all about fiduciary duty for your client because you're essentially representing them on their behalf. So you need to act as if you're them. Now, NAR, just the National Association of Realtors, actually made there was a huge lawsuit and class action lawsuit, and it really made some waves in the industry. They essentially allowed the seller, you can't advertise that you're paying a broker's fee for the buyer. So let's say there's a tenant, they want to do a deal, they're going to hire a broker to find them somewhere to lease or a deal to be had.
Hmm.
And that broker is paid by the landlord. And the landlord is also paying their own broker representation. So what this ruling made was essentially the tenant needs to pay for their own broker, and there can't be any incentive for the broker from the landlord because that's not really representation because they're going to go to the landlord that's going to pay their fee. They're
Mhm.
not going to go to the landlord
So
that
they don't
might,
have the customer's best interest in mind.
they don't. Now, it cut costs for the landlord because they're like, oh, now I don't have to pay 4%, because that's typically what the tenant rep or the buyer rep broker would get paid.
Mhm.
4% of the total fees, so typically 6%. 2.5 goes to the landlord broker because they're waiting for a call. And when they get the call, they're like, okay, I'll take this to the landlord, and they're just, pushing papers. So they're just
Mhm.
facilitating. I think that it's saving costs for the landlord, but I think it's also hurting the consumer because now those brokers are not going to take them to potential deals. They're going to take them to deals that they know that the landlord is going to pay, even though they can't advertise they're paying. Those brokers are calling all of these landlords saying, hey, you've got 100 spaces available. Are you paying a buyer broker commission? Like, yes. Like, okay. So they're establishing their relationships and they're still going to, called steering. They're not supposed to steer. It's like, hey, I know you're focused in this direction, but how about we look here? You're not supposed to do that in real estate. I think this encourages it when they're really trying to help, but it still gives so much leverage to your broker. You just need to do your own research, do your own deal,
Mhm.
is really what it is, and have the
Right.
education, knowledge to find your own jobs, if you will.
Right. So
That's
then,
what.
so that's what I'm talking about. In order to be able to put yourself in the position to do your own deal and to do your own jobs, if you're thinking about that now and you are working with a broker now, start thinking about that more and doing those things. So you're aligned for a cleaner break because otherwise, like I said, you're going to spend 3 to 6 months building up your online profile because
Yep.
you're gonna need to do a lot of local because that's the fastest way for you to get reviews. Long distance is a longer game because they still need to get their stuff, which means you won't get that review until they get their stuff. Versus local job, you just completed it today. The customer's happy, you can get that review right there and then. You have it's a much faster track to
Mhm.
get that up to get those reviews up to a point where you can start doing your own long distance.
What I like about what you do is you're not a broker.
No,
You're acting on the behalf of, as if you're an extension of their company,
that's the goal.
acting on their behalf to close a deal. Now,
Absolutely.
brokers are supposed to function like that,
They
and they
don't.
don't. They don't. And it's unfair. It's unfortunate
Well,
because
the way that they function, it's not, frankly, it's not fair to the consumer
mm-mm.
and it's not fair to the companies. Either
You,
way, like, and the brokers that do this correctly, they're few and far between. It's a very rare commodity in general. But in general, we can talk about this for a
we
very,
need to talk
very
about the
long
whole
time.
time.
Yeah, there's a
Yeah.
lot of things to talk about. But yeah, I mean, let's see what happens the next 60 days. Hopefully, we're seeing some things. But guys, make sure that you look at what your stuff is. Look at it at your company from a standpoint of a consumer that's going to want to choose. Why would they want to choose you? Is there
Yep.
visibility online? Is there not visibility online? You need to work on that. No visibility, no jobs, or less jobs, or smaller jobs than you would if you had that visibility. So that's something that you got to think from the get-go, from coming out of the gate. The sooner you build it, the sooner they will come, to use the
Yeah.
old cliche, right? So
Yeah.
once again, Bryan, thank you very much for joining us. This was very informative, and thank you very much for the information that's there. And like I always say, the world moves on its own, so let the professionals move yours for you. Thank you very much for joining the podcast, and we'll have the information here for Bryan listed underneath this. So please like, subscribe, and support our podcast and the Bryan stuff, please. And
Yes,
thank you very
sir.
much for joining us. We'll
Of
talk soon.
course. Thank you.